Candidates Night. While we and the candidates are participating via Zoom, you have the option of watching tonight on CNET Channel 7 or online at cnet1.org. Normally, we would get to hear candidates answer questions from the audience in person, but as we are all acutely aware, these are not normal times. Tragically, more than 211,000 of our fellow Americans have perished this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We, together with League members throughout the nation, offer our best wishes and prayers for all those affected, including the President and First Lady, to have a full and speedy recovery. Please join me in just a moment please join me for a moment of silence for all those who have lost their lives and for those still suffering. Thank you. The League of Women Voters of Centre County has been hosting a nonpartisan forum prior to each election in Pennsylvania for over 50 years. We are very proud of this event, as well as our other nonpartisan work to benefit all of the voters of Centre County. This includes our popular voters guide prepared by the League together with the candidates themselves. The guide is generously published by the CDT in print and online, and in mid-October usually, and we sincerely thank them for doing so. The guide will also be available on our website at lwvcentercounty.org. And currently you can find information on all candidates in their own words on the League's vote411.org website. We thank CNET for the live coverage of this event. CNET will also rebroadcast tonight's coverage on Channel 7 several times before the election on November 3rd. A recording of this event will remain available to view online at cnet1.org and our website at lwvcentercounty.org until after the election. A special thank you from us goes out to Nick Zepp, our Zoom guru, for providing technical assistance and making sure that all goes smoothly this evening. Thank you, Nick. Our objective in hosting Candidates Night is to provide voters with the information needed to make informed decisions about this election in a head-to-head format, providing equal time for each candidate to present their position and their potential solutions for issues of concern in our community. These forums are absolutely invaluable to voters as they choose the public servants who will represent and speak for them in Washington or Harrisburg. For this to be most effective, all candidates seeking to make decisions that affect the lives of residents regarding healthcare, education, taxes, jobs, security, land use, and so much more should be present. Candidates Night also offers a glimpse of how the candidates might work together with their opponents in the Senate or the House of Representatives in a respectful, bipartisan manner if they are elected or re-elected. Town halls and interviews, while informative, are by their very nature one-sided in presenting only that candidate's positions and potential solutions. That makes it unnecessarily difficult for voters to contrast the candidates and then choose the one that best aligns with their own views. We're certainly aware that officials and candidates are very busy with tight schedules. However, they do their work on behalf of the people who elected them, and they have some responsibility to make themselves available to those people when given the opportunity. With that in mind, on August 31st of 2020, we invited all congressional and legislative candidates who will be on the ballot to give them ample time to plan accordingly. We coordinated Candidates Night so as not to conflict with legislative sessions so that incumbents would more likely be available. We sincerely thank each of the candidates and elected officials who have chosen to join us tonight. That brings us to noting that not all the candidates will join us tonight, although they all received our invitation and their responses were sought multiple times. The Federal Election Commission, regulations that govern such forums, and the League of Women Voters' own policies that guide us require that federal contests must have at least two parties represented for each office at a candidate forum such as tonight. The following are the federal candidates who were invited and their responses or lack thereof. Pennsylvania 12th Congressional District, candidate Lee Griffin, Democrat, accepted our invitation. U.S. Representative Fred Keller, Republican, declined our invitation to participate with no reason provided. Pennsylvania 15th Congressional District, neither candidate Robert Williams, Democrat, nor U.S. Representative Glenn Thompson, Republican, responded to our invitation, despite being contacted multiple times. Therefore, these federal congressional districts are unfortunately not represented tonight at our candidates' night. We are disappointed for the voters who will not have the opportunity to ask questions of these candidates in a head-to-head format. Although some state house candidates have also declined our invitation, the same FEC rules do not apply to state offices. The following are the state house candidates who were invited and their responses. For Pennsylvania State House 77th District, Representative Scott Conklin, Democrat, and Steve Yetsko, Republican, both of whom accepted our invitation to participate. For the Pennsylvania State House 76th District, Joe Waltz, Democrat, accepted our invitation to participate. Representative Stephanie Borowitz, Republican, declined our invitation to participate due to a prior engagement. For the State House 81st District, Ian Michael Kidd, Democrat, accepted our invitation to participate. Representative Richard Irvin, Republican, declined our invitation to participate due to a prior engagement. And for the Pennsylvania State House 171 District, Peter Buck, Democrat, and Hobson McCown, write-in candidate, both accepted our invitation to participate. Representative Carrie Benninghoff, Republican, declined our invitation to participate due to a prior engagement. Questions for tonight posed by our moderator have been submitted via email by the public and vetted by the League of Women Voters of Center County for appropriateness for that particular race, for duplication, and for respectfulness. Other questions have been prepared by the League itself. We look forward to hearing from these candidates who feel it's important to make time to engage with their constituents and answer their questions in a head-to-head format that allows voters to better understand the choices. We urge every voter to educate themselves about candidates' positions and records prior to casting their ballot on November 3rd. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the evening's moderator, Jennifer Nicholas, who will open the first session and review the rules of this evening's forum. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your desire to participate in our democracy. Jennifer?
Thank you so much, Sue. This is our very first virtual candidates night, and we welcome everyone. We do wish to thank the Center County Commissioners for sponsoring CNET coverage of candidates nights. Members of the public were invited to submit questions through the League of Women Voters website through October 1st. The races being profiled tonight include the State House races for districts 76th, 77th, 81st, and 171st. For all races, each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. Candidates will then have 90 seconds for a closing statement. Candidates, we ask that you please mute yourself when it is not your race. We will begin tonight with our candidates for the 77th Pennsylvania House District. Please welcome Democrat Scott Conklin and Republican Steve Yetsko. You may now unmute yourselves. Okay, our very first question tonight is going to go to Mr. Conklin. Do we have Mr. Conklin here?
I am ready.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome. Your question tonight, and then we will go to you, Steve, is why would you like to serve in this office and what qualifies you for this position?
Thank you. I want to thank you for the question. I want to thank the League, CNET, the county commissioners, but most of all, I want to thank my wife and my family who have given me the opportunity and the support you need to do this job. What gives me the qualifications is that I often tell folks the first time I ran for office, I lost for a Senate seat. That was the best thing that ever happened. It gave me the opportunity to become a two-term county commissioner. I had the opportunity to oversee children and youth, office of aging, transportation, the elderly, everything that touches your life, the correctional system. It gave me those tools that I need to go into the state house. In the private sector, I was a builder, and I was a national builder for the builders. I was a national director for the Builders Association. It gave me the opportunity to run a business, which I do today, along with my wife. we're able to run a successful business and to work hard. So what's most important about this is the experience, the understanding, and the knowledge that it takes to not only do the job, but also the background to understand what it's like to be out in the field working and making a living.
Thank you. Mr. Yetzko, why would you like to serve in this office and what qualifies you for the position?
First came to the 77th District back in 1985 when I was an undergrad at Penn State University. Graduated with honors in economics from Penn State. I came back about 20 years later. I moved back here in 2000 and me and my wife settled here. My wife's a nurse, operating room nurse. She's done that for a long time. We raised our kids here. My kids went to school at Our Lady of Victory and State College, and now they're at Bald Eagle. I've worked here for years in multiple jobs. I'm currently doing HVAC work. I work for a company in town, and I've been in many people's homes. I've worked hard, and I think we're not represented well. And I think I've got a good way. I live in the rural areas, but I'm connected very well with State College. I think I can do well to go down to Harrisburg and listen to people and represent us.
Thank you. We are rotating who goes first tonight. So Steve, our next question will be for you. In this pandemic, we have seen the reliance on broadband access rise for telemedicine, education, and other basic human needs services. And only about half of Pennsylvanians have access to broadband as defined by the FCC. If elected, what is your plan to spread broadband access to rural Pennsylvanians?
This is one that really hits home for me. I live in the Bald Eagle Valley, and my kids were off school this past year, and our internet was sometimes out for 2 and 3 days on end. And we live so deep in the hollow, we can't get satellite television. And it's a big deal for people up in Rush Township. And it has made things incredibly difficult, including why I am not doing this from my home this evening, because I couldn't guarantee you that my internet wouldn't go out during this meeting. So I can feel the pain on this. I think what we need to do, the model when there was rural electrification back in the 20s and 30s, they had to find a way to get electricity out to those rural areas. I think we need a similar model today, only with broadband internet. And it's something important because the haves and the have-nots, and I'm one of the have-nots in this one, we need to bring that together. And State College has great internet, which is part of the 77th District. But once you get beyond the Bald Eagle Ridge, we're having a tough time out there, and it's been really hard during this pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
Oh, thank you. One of the things that we've been working on, in fact, this dates back 20 years when I was a member of CEDACOG as the County Commissioners Association. We've been trying to bring into rural Pennsylvania. One of the two obstacles we have, of course, is money, and two, a buy-in from some major carriers. Sorry to say that some of the major carriers have been obstacles with donations to many of my colleagues to help slow the process down. We cannot have an effective business community without broadband. We cannot have effective education without broadband. Many of the individuals, Ray and Julianne, we've had to talk with one of the carriers to bring them up to bring them up to speed over the last few years. They weren't that we continue doing this, but what's even more imperative we don't get them. We continue to work day in and day out. So for myself, we're going to bring the funding in. We're going to continue to amend those bills to try to bring the money in. We're going to work at budget time to make sure they are. And even myself in rural Rush Township, as you can tell, sometimes my internet gets spotty as well. So if we want a business climate, we want our children to be educated properly, and we want to be able to bring everybody in the 21st century, we have to continue to bring internet access to everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin, we'll start with you now. This next question is about climate change. What is your position on the science of climate change, and what legislation would you propose to support this or not?
I belong to the Climate Caucus. Anyone that tells you that there isn't climate change is either sadly mistaken or they don't understand the reality of the situation, what's going on today. We can argue whether it's a natural occurrence or whether it's man-made. But at the end of the day, you're seeing fires like you've never seen before, hurricanes that are blowing in at forces we've never seen. So if we really truly love this earth, and it's biblical, anybody that worships on Sunday, if they read the book of which they worship from, they'll find out that this environment is the most important thing we have. So for myself, I'll continue to stay on the Climate Caucus. I'll continue to look at that legislation that keeps the environment clean, that makes sure that we leave something for the next generation. We fought hard over the years to make sure that the environment's clean. And we'll continue that fight, not just now, but in my next term as well.
Thank you. Mr. Yetsko.
Oh, yes. I am a big believer in climate change. I believe the climate has always been changing since the first existence of Earth. There's never been a time in the existence of Earth that the climate hasn't been changing. And unfortunately, I think it's almost crazier to think that somehow we can stop the climate from changing, that we can put the brakes on, or alternately, that the climate that is right now is the optimal climate. We've gone through so many times. We went through in the 70s a time of cooling, and it was going to be the new ice age. And then we went through times of warming. We were told that by 2006, we weren't going to know what snow is anymore. We weren't going to know. Now, I'm all in favor of clean air and water. And I think we've done so much over the years to clean up our air and our water. And it's so much cleaner than when I was a kid. But I'm just not sure that the whole idea that we can somehow stop climate change is something that's even possible. And we used to do things called cost-benefit analysis, things that would say, what's it going to cost us for this minute or more cleanup? And I'm not sure we're doing that today.
Thank you. Mr. Yetsko. As has been highlighted recently, the health and safety, perception included, of voters is vitally important. What changes to the voting process would you support that would encourage the health and safety, physical and mental, of voters? Potential health and safety related concerns include current pandemic related concerns, long lines, voter intimidation, the proximity of campaigning to the polling places, the presence of a constable at polling places, and poll watchers. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a long question. We voted in the primaries in the spring, and boy, everyone said that it was going to be a super spreader event. Our county commissioners were very concerned. They wanted to keep us in yellow because we were all going to get the virus and it was going to be so terrible. But to my knowledge, just not sure there was any safety concerns. I voted. I think if people want to wear masks, I think they should. And but I didn't remember anything that there was any safety concerns involved in it. I do think there should be constables there. I am concerned about intimidation, and there should be none of that. I'm somewhat concerned a little bit about mail-in voting. I know a lot of people are doing that. I've been talking to a lot of people. Some are adamant that they want to do it, and others say, no, I want to show up at the polling place. I like going to the polling place. I don't mind showing my ID. I think sometimes the whole voting thing is more of a social event as well, at least out where I'm at in Houston Township. And I didn't think we ever had much of a problem. But again, I know this year's a strange year. We've never had one like it. It's been a hell of a ride.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
The safety of the voters and the safety of the individual should be our top priority. This isn't a joke. This isn't a political statement. What this is the best story I tell folks, and it's a sad story. There were 5 people died from a wedding. Not one person that went to the wedding died of COVID. They went and infected 5 other people that lost their lives. You may be lucky. You may be nothing more than a spreader when you go out. You may be lucky that no one in your family's been affected. But at the same time, the science tells you it's real. I chaired the election board. I sat on the election board for 7 years. Anybody that tells you it's not safe, anybody that tells you no excuse absentees, it can be corrupted, are 100% falsely wrong. You're telling me that the good Republicans and the good Democrats that oversee our election system at the county are corrupt. They are not. What we have to do is remember that, yeah, one thing, if you are comfortable going, it's perfectly okay. Go ahead. But at the same time, giving those individuals a chance to be safe and comfortable and do it safely, because no excuse absentee voting is safe. No one's going to corrupt your vote. If you feel threatened by the mail system, put it in the drop box. But the most important thing, whether you vote Republican, Democrat, Independent, or write somebody in, is to go out and vote.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin. Many Pennsylvania farmers have been impacted by the current economic situation. What would you propose to help our farmers?
One of the things that we've done, as I was on the Ag Committee for many years, is that there are many different things. The first thing we have to remember is that the milk industry today is being devastated. That those farmers that sell the milk to wherever it may be, is that the price of cheese is down, the price of the products is down, the price of pork is down. It's been hurting these individuals. We have to make sure that at the state and at the federal level, we have the subsidies in place. The tariffs and the embargoes have devastated many of our farmers because they weren't able to sell overseas. So we have to continue, as a local legislator, I have to work with the federal legislators to make sure that goes through. We have to, I believe we have to bring back many of the programs we had in the 70s and 80s, that the state actually purchase more dairy products to help out the farmers to be able to give to the low income families. We have to look at the meat products, get involved at the state level for the food banks to be able to pass that out as well. But there are many things we can do at a legislative level, if nothing more, be an advocate.
Thank you. Mr. Yetzko.
Our farmers locally are probably the hardest working people out there. And over the years, and as Scott said, the dairy industry is just taken a beating. There's other states that do things a little bit differently than Pennsylvania, and maybe we look at some of the other states that are involved in it. But I know that I would agree with you, Scott, on that one, very much so. And we've seen their prices are going down. I think there was a lot of problems also with the pandemic, and because things weren't getting the market, and there was just a lot of disruptions. And so that's one I will agree with you on, Scott. We need to help our farmers.
Thank you. Mr. Yetzko, please share your views on how to balance public health and the need to maintain economic stability during public health crises such as the current pandemic.
And that's a good question. I believe that locally, Phillipsburg isn't Philadelphia. And I think the solutions need to come locally. Recently, my son graduated from Bald Eagle, and we were able to figure out how to do an in-person graduation and do it safely. And we had, each family was allowed to bring in 4 people. They were separated, but we figured it out. And we were able to do it without anything coming from Harrisburg or from Washington. And I think the individual governments and even state colleges in Phillipsburg. And I think each time our local people are way smarter than they think in Harrisburg. And we can use common sense to find out how to do things safely and how to be open and how to keep our businesses going and our economy. The center region and State College Center County has really taken a beating this year. And we have to figure out those ways locally that we can get businesses back running and get our economy back running and get our lives back running safely. And I believe in the people here, and I believe we can do it.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
You and I are going to hold hands again on this question. One of the things that for myself is it's no secret in Harrisburg that the governor and I have disagreed on some of the things he put in place. But at the same time, it's been over 102 years since we've had a pandemic like this. And a lot of things that we're learning we'll be able to use in the future. When you look at the school districts, one of the things I wrote the governor a letter and voted against him on the fact that I believe that school districts should have more say whether parents with football games will be able to do certain things. When the realtors weren't allowed, I voted to allow the realtors to be able to sell homes because individuals still need houses in a pandemic. But when you look, you see a lot of things we've learned from this, and you're seeing a lot of changing as it goes forward. It's always an evolution. It's always revolving. So I think the most important thing that we have to remember from this pandemic is that we remember what we did, what worked and what didn't work, because it's only a matter of time until it happens again. And that's the most important thing, is that we don't get political, we work together and we work through it.
Thank you. We are now going to begin closing statements. Mr. Yetzko, we'll begin with you.
Oh, I have to go first. Hey, I want to thank everybody for the Zoom meeting this evening. And I put myself out there. Scott's been in office for a long time, and I've never did this before. But I feel like people should have a choice when they go in to the voting booth. And I don't think anyone should just walk in unopposed every time. And there's people that like Scott, but there's people that maybe were looking for something new, a new voice in Harrisburg. And I hope they vote for me. And I will look at things. I'm a hardworking guy, and I'm hoping they would consider me to be their representative in the 77th district.
Thank you. Mr. Conklin.
Again, I want to thank the league, CNET, the county commissioners, my family, and most of all, everyone who's watching tonight. It's so important that Mr. Yetzko got involved this year, that he gives us a different view of what this is about. Because he's not only someone that votes, he's not only my constituent, but he's someone that has something to say. And it's even more important that someone in my position shows up. We're paid to do a job. We should be responsible for every vote we make, and we should be able to face you, the voters, every year. We're fortunate because we're out of session. This tonight and the next debate that my opponent and I are going to do is very important, because the citizens have the right to hear their elected officials, what their views are. We should be held to the fire to see if we've done the things correctly. So as we move forward this year into next year, we should always be open, because this isn't Republican, this isn't Democrat, this is us. We make up this community, every one of us, and every voice should be heard, no matter who you are, how much you make, where you live, or how you believe. Your voice is important. For that reason, I'll continue to represent every individual in my district. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. And hopefully I'm able to continue and be your voice.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to join us this evening.
Thank you.
Hey, good night.
I would now like to welcome our Democrat candidate for the 76th Pennsylvania House District. This is Joe Waltz. Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. If I have a moment, Jennifer, I'd also like to thank you to the Center County League of Women Voters for putting on this forum, for doing it in a safe way, and for inviting me to attend. Thank you.
You're welcome. So our first question for you is, In this pandemic, we have seen the reliance on broadband access rise for telemedicine, education, and other basic human needs services. And only about half of Pennsylvanians have access to broadband as defined by the FCC. If elected, what is your plan to spread broadband access to rural Pennsylvanians?
Thank you, Jennifer. You're right. For seems like decades, Harrisburg has been promising all of us that we would have high-speed internet access. And as of this moment in time, I don't think there's a single county in the state of Pennsylvania that has over half the population with access to high-speed internet. Now, this is before my time, but back in, I think, the late 30s, early 40s, the federal government instituted a REA, Rural Electrification Act, to bring electricity to rural homes. What we need to do today is we need an RBA, a Rural Broadband Act, to do the same thing. I look at it as utility. I think the internet, broadband, is as important, is as essential as is electricity, as is water. We have seniors that could access broadband for telemedicine. We have, of course, with a pandemic, we have students that need it for research, for doing homework. We have small businesses that need to market themselves and catalog the wares that they have to sell. I would like to see, honestly, I would like to see the government reach out. I would like to see a partnership, a public-private partnership between the government and, for example, cable providers, for example, telephone companies, to bring high-speed internet to the last rural household in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Mr. Waltz, the United States has very low voter turnout. Many people lack access, are disengaged in politics, or do not feel like their vote matters. What do you think about Pennsylvania's recent change to accept mail-in ballots? And what do you feel should be done to further increase voting access and to encourage voting in your district?
That's a good question. Yes, the turnout for elections has been disappointing. And of course, as you just said, I would love to see that change and change quickly. I personally believe that mail-in ballots are safe. I know they've been around for seems like ever, but of course, with the pandemic, life has been turned upside down, so to speak. Mail-in ballots that have been forever have certainly come into the forefront right now. We need mail-in ballots. We need to keep people safe. I know of one elderly friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who was all set to vote by mail, but became confused. The chaos that seems to be coming out of Harrisburg, and now isn't so sure that that mail-in ballot will be counted. So she is going to take, I don't want to say her life in her hands because that's a little melodramatic, but she is going to take all necessary precautions to go to vote in person. Basically, I look at it this way, Jennifer. If you want to vote in person, so be it. Practice social distancing, please wear a mask. But those people that want to mail in their ballot should certainly be allowed to do so. And I think it should be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waltz, please explain your roots and involvement in the communities you're running in to serve and what qualifies you for the position.
Well, let's do the roots first. I grew up on a small farm in Lycoming County. I have lived here in Clinton County, part of the 76th district, of course, for nearly 50 years now. I was a public high school teacher for 34 of those years. I married my wife, who's a small business owner and is native to the Lock Haven and Clinton County area. So my roots basically is the fact that I have lived in this area for so long. I have had, I hate to give my age, but I've had grandparents and parents and children and grandchildren and cousins and uncles. I've had literally thousands upon thousands of students in this area. As far as why I am running, Jennifer, it's because I feel that I have so much in common with the people of the 76th district. With all the years of my life, all the white hair is proof of it. I've had a lot of experiences with common experiences with people in the 76th district. Everything from growing up on a farm to being the first person in my family to go to college, to marrying a wife that had a small business, to teaching school for 34 years, to caring for elderly people. So that is why I want to run. I want to take those common experiences with me to Harrisburg and fight to answer those issues that people in 76 are having. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is about health care. What is your position on the Affordable Care Act?
I am for it, Jennifer. I think it needs to be strengthened. Healthcare is the #1 issue in Pennsylvania right now, and it's a bipartisan issue. And it's a bipartisan issue, Jennifer, because it is a human issue. I go to Harrisburg. We need to work together. It is not a Republican or Democrat issue. As I said, it is an issue that we all need to come together and work. I want to it's a sad note that I want to make, but we have to expand, pre-existing coverage. And as you said earlier, maybe Susan had said earlier, we have 170,000 more Pennsylvanians who have suffered the coronavirus that now will have pre-existing conditions. We have to be ready for that. I would like to work together to lower prescription drug costs, of course. As you said earlier, we need to expand telemedicine to all households in Pennsylvania. And I most certainly support House Bill 3, which gives the state its own personal online marketplace, saving millions upon millions upon millions of dollars that we don't have to pay the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question was submitted through our website by one of your constituents. Do you support property tax reform, and what specific measures would you propose? Would you support property tax reform for all disabled veterans at the 100% level?
I'll start with the last part of your question first. Yes, I would sponsor tax reform for all disabled veterans. They spent years of their life away from their families. They spent years of their life away from their homes. I think that's the least that we could do for them. Some ideas that I have, and I have to say this quickly because I know I only have 60 seconds. In the 60s, the state of Pennsylvania funded its school district at a 50% level. Today, the state of Pennsylvania funds its school district at approximately a 38% level. Who is making up that difference in funding? It's you, it's me, it's the taxpayer. And usually we'll make that up via property taxes. Some people I know want to eliminate it altogether, Jennifer, but that leaves corporations off the hook. They now no longer have to pay a property tax either. So we would make up that difference through increased sales tax or increased personal income tax. What I would like to do for everybody is to have a tax rebate, whereas every homeowner would get a $2,000 tax rebate. If your taxes are $2,000 or less, you pay nothing. If your taxes are over $2,000, you just simply pay the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question for you is about education. Do you agree with the reductions in funding for Pennsylvania education over the past decades? If you agree with this funding pattern, how will Pennsylvania serve all of its students from K through 12 to higher ed in a way that really prepares them for the future?
I do not necessarily agree with the funding pattern as it has been. As you heard me say earlier, funding was higher back in the 60s, including up to the 80s, where it slowly decreased down to that 38% level. As a retired school teacher, 34 years in a classroom, I think all children deserve a fair and an equitable quality education. The problem is not all students are receiving an equitable education. If you are living in a school district with a great tax base, a high tax base, a vibrant tax base, you have access to a lot more things, materials, educational tools than someone who lives in a poor school district has. And to me, that's a form of discrimination. I know the General Assembly not too long ago passed a Fair Funding Act, and I think that's a big step in the right direction. But I also think that to meet the intent of the Fair Funding Act, we need to get back to 50% funding from the state. Thank you.
Thank you. We would now like to give you 90 seconds for your closing statement, and we will begin now.
Thank you, Jennifer. I've really enjoyed this forum. I appreciate, again, as I said earlier, having been asked, having been invited to attend it. Thank you to Center County League of Women Voters, again, for providing this forum tonight. Debates, I feel, are the best way to know what a candidate stands for, and I'm grateful you've taken the time to listen to me this evening. The gridlock in Harrisburg over the past few years has shown us that we need new people, that are willing to work across the aisle, as I would, to build a consensus, not just toe the party line, not just talk the party rhetoric. Also, I want to mention that my campaign, our campaign, has been funded by a great many small dollar donations, largely from within the 76th district. I have not taken 1 cent from corporate PACs because I hope to represent you and not the corporations who may want to take advantage of our district. I spent my whole life in this area, Jennifer, and I know the challenges and I know the opportunities that we all face. All of us in the 76 have a whole lot more in common than we do differences. And when you send me to Harrisburg, I will continue to meet with you, as Scott said earlier, listen to your concerns and help find solutions for the 76th district. Again, thank you very much for your time. And until we can actually meet face to face, an elbow bump's going to have to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to Mr. Joe Waltz, our Democrat candidate for the 76th Pennsylvania House District. Next, we're going to be turning to our Democrat candidate for the 81st Pennsylvania House District. Please welcome Mr. Ian Kidd.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor. And again, as my friend Joe just said, until we can meet in person, I guess this will have to suffice, right? It's good to be speaking. It's good to be present as we can be.
Absolutely. So our first question for you tonight is about the economy. Many Pennsylvania farmers have been impacted by the current economic situation. What would you propose to help our farmers?
Well, thank you for the question. Again, thank you for hosting not just my campaign, our campaign here, but the entire slate of candidates who were willing to show up tonight. I wish my opponent would have decided that this was important enough to engage with the constituency outside of his base, but I appreciate the question on farmers and agriculture. I come from an agricultural district, as many of us in the Central PA region do. Again, I appreciate some of the discussion we've had on how we can help our farmers tonight. I would echo all of those sentiments, and then I would further go to say that some of the multinational corporations, the MNCs, which come in and which really load our farmers full of debt by using low yield, high cost seeds that they have to purchase over and over again annually. I would like to put a stop to that. I believe that the corporate takeover of small farms, small agricultural industries in central Pennsylvania has been a detriment, not just to the industry itself, but to the livelihood of the constituencies, particularly of the 81st. And I believe that we can work toward a collectivist, more locally centered, locally funded approach toward helping our farmers.
Thank you. Mr. Kidd, as you may have heard earlier, in this pandemic, we have seen the reliance on broadband access rise for telemedicine, education, and other basic human needs services. And only about half of Pennsylvanians have access to broadband as defined by the FCC. If elected, what is your plan to spread broadband access to rural Pennsylvanians?
Yes, thank you. I believe this is an imperative question, as we have noted, right? I mean, we're on a Zoom tonight for a reason. We've seen some technological difficulties even this evening, but I believe that and access to internet needs to be similar to access to other utilities which we have currently. So I believe that access to internet needs to be considered a right, which we need to refocus our intent on achieving. There is a goal which we need to achieve. We are halfway there. It is not enough to stop at 50%. So we need to, again, potentially, similar to the Valley Rural Collective, which brings electricity to the rural areas, we need to come up with a collectivized, locally centered idea on which we can bring further internet access to our more rural and our more economically depressed areas. For instance, I taught at Mount Union area a junior high last year in 6th grade. When we went local, I have so many concerns about the opportunity for students to access internet and therefore access a quality education.
Thank you. Mr. Kidd, what is your position on the science of climate change, and what legislation would you propose to support your position?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting wording. I don't believe that we need to necessarily have faith in science, as it is borne out over and over and over again. In education, we say if a test is reliable and valid, then it is accurate. And again, we see the reliability and the validity of the science, which has borne out that we are in the middle of a climate crisis. We need to invest in sustainable infrastructure, sustainable economic industries, and sustainable methods for reducing the amount of carbon emission which we locally express, our output, and which we can divest from our current industries, which are non-sustainable, non-renewable resources, and pivot toward an economic industry where we are lowering our net carbon emission and increasing our reliance on renewable natural resources.
Thank you. Mr. Kidd, why would you like to serve in this office, and what qualifies you for the position?
Yeah, thank you for this question. As you may be able to tell, I'm a little bit younger than the other candidates on this forum, although I am competing with Joe Waltz for the number of gray hairs per capita per candidate. So when I was 17 years old, I was invited to join the Rick Rogers for the 81st District campaign. I began as a speechwriter, a writer for letters to the editor. I eventually worked my way up over the next 3 cycles to deputy campaign manager. This is a race that I have quite literally dedicated a third of my own personal life to. And now that I'm out front, I believe that I have the ability to connect Democrats with Republicans, with disengaged voters, with people who don't believe that the system works for them, and to tangibly show them that I will show up. Unlike my opponent, I will show up to you. You can yell at me, we can disagree, but together we can form a consensus. And I believe I'm the person who can bring that consensus to the 81st District.
Mr. Kidd, the United States has very low voter turnout. Many people lack access, they're disengaged in politics, and they don't feel like their vote matters. What do you think about Pennsylvania's recent change to accept mail-in ballots? And what do you feel like should be done to further increase voting access and encourage voters in your district?
Again, we realized specifically during this cycle how imperative this issue is. Obviously, I support the use of mail-in ballots for public safety, for efficiency for those who have difficulty traveling, whether they don't have access to vehicles or transportation, whether their voting place is far away, or whatever the impairment to voting is. First of all and foremost, I believe that we need to, as a Congress in Pennsylvania, we need to make Election Day a statewide holiday. There should be no one who does not have the ability to engage in their civic duty, which is voting. Voting is a civic duty of our constituents, of our citizenship. And by putting elections on a Tuesday in November, we need to make sure that we can expand the accessibility so that everyone can vote further. We need to expand the opportunities for incarcerated and recently released individuals from jail and from the penitentiary so that they can work back toward, after they pay their debts to society, to continue their reintroduction into society, their activity within our civic engagement. So make Election Day a statewide holiday, improve mail-in ballots, make more mail-in drop boxes, and increase the ability for people to engage in their democracy.
Thank you. Our final question for you is, we live in a polarized political era where constituents do not always feel as if their representative is representing or even cares about their needs and interests, especially if they're a member of a different political party. What measures will you take to foster dialogue between your constituents with differing opinions?
Yeah, certainly. And what it's about to me is the work. In doing the work every single day, we indicate that we will show up for our people. One of my biggest supporters is in Southern Huntington in the Cromwell Township area. She's a diehard 4 more years of Trump, Mastriano for governor. The coronavirus we need to reopen our economy, but she also is supporting my bid for state rep in the 81st District because she knows that I will show up each and every single day. I'm the person who is working hard to reach Democrats, to reach Republicans, to reach independents, and those disaffected voters who have disavowed the political experience. We work together. We have success when we work together. and we achieve our common goals. You know, for our district is just about 60,000 people. There is not one issue that affects one person that does not affect another person or another family. We are in this together. We fundamentally cannot play politics on issues of security, of freedom, of access to, internet and economic vitality. We have to work together. It is simply imperative.
Thank you. You're now going to have 90 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, thank you. And quickly, I would just like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Center County region in general, the Center County commissioners, and everyone who tuned in tonight. I thank my fellow candidates. I really believe that this is where we turn talk into action. So while I'm disappointed that my opponent has refused the opportunity to engage with constituents outside of his base, his prior engagement at Republican dinner in Huntington County tonight, I will believe that I have the opportunity to speak and engage and have this joyous moment of interacting with everybody. I believe that we can build a better district, a better state, and a better world when we work together. And things like these, when we turn talk to action, when we expand our borders, when we open up to different people with different ideas, is when we start to do the work that needs to get done. So again, I would just like to thank CNET, Center County, for hosting this event, for recording this, for getting this out. I'd like to thank all the other candidates, and I would just really encourage everyone. Tuesday, October 12th is the last day to register to vote. Please vote. Please engage in your civic duty, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Ian Kidd, the Democrat candidate for the 81st Pennsylvania House District. Finally, we will introduce all of you to Mr. Peter Buck, who is the Democrat candidate for the 171st Pennsylvania House District. Mr. Buck, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Our first question for you tonight is about your qualifications for office. Why would you like to serve in this office, and what qualifies you for the position?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And once again, thank you. Thank you to the League, to the commissioners, to the citizens of Pennsylvania for doing what they're going to do on November 3rd or before to vote. And I want to thank my family as well. I'm running because I believe at the end of the day, the people of the 171st Legislative District need a choice. And I have served in local government. I was the chair of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. I serve as the president-elect of a statewide higher education organization. And at the end of the day, I love my home. I love my community. And people who work with me on the teams that I build or participate on know that I'm a person of action, service, and who wants to get things done for them.
Thank you. Mr. Buck, we live in a polarized political era where constituents do not always feel as if their representative is representing or even cares about their needs and interests, especially if you're a member of a different political party. What measures will you take to foster dialogue between your constituents with different opinions?
Yeah, so through my work at Penn State University, I have gotten to do things like create public issues forums. And I think that we need more kinds of things like that, where you pose questions to the public and you get them to come together and deliberate on an issue of common concern, whether that is the expansion of rural broadband or race in America or the impacts of climate change, what we should do about guns and the Second Amendment, all of these things. At a fundamental level, what we need is to support that kind of community activity. And, through state government, we could budget for that to help local municipal governments, school districts do that kind of thing. I would also say that at the next higher level, that gerrymandering has driven this kind of polarization because it's created ever more extreme behavior and extreme positions by politicians and a lack of talking to the center of the country and the center of our conscience.
Mr. Buck, what is your position on the science of climate change? And what legislation would you propose to support your position?
Well, we know that the climate is changing. We know it's caused by human beings. We know that it doesn't care what political party you're in, and that it impacts you where you live, whether that's in California or Australia or Florida or right here in Pennsylvania. The other thing is that we also know that we can do things about it. And in fact, I've done quite a bit about this. I served on the state's largest solar power working group at Penn State University. We need to change the alternative energy portfolio standard to encourage solar. We also know that we need to work with farmers, to work on our private forests, to sink carbon, and that can make us a more beautiful and prosperous place. Yeah, it is unequivocal. We need to take action, and I will do everything that I can.
As has been highlighted recently, the health and safety, perception included, of voters is vitally important. What changes to the voting process would you support that would encourage the health and safety, physical and mental, of voters? Potential health and safety related concerns may include current pandemic related concerns, long lines, voter intimidation, the proximity of campaigning to the polling places, the presence of a constable at polling places, and poll watchers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I know that recent statements by certain national politicians created quite a bit of fright among people. You know, the concern that, quite frankly, white supremacist militias were going to be, summoned to watch polls and maintain integrity. And this is just simply unacceptable. We have an election system that is built fundamentally on trust. And the people who work in our polls, as Scott Conklin said earlier, the Democrats and the Republicans who want to make sure that your vote counts, that it is secure, that it's transparent, that it has integrity. We need to support those people. I also very, very much am in favor of the universal mail-in ballot. I'm glad that we're doing that. My sister lives in Oregon, and they've been doing it for years, and I'm excited to see how Pennsylvania perfects that system.
Thank you. What is your position on the science and the enforcement of public health mandates to, for example, wear masks, limit crowd sizes, and socially distance during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I have certainly been in favor of the municipal responses in Pennsylvania, such as in the State College Borough, Ferguson Township, Patton Township, College Township, where they have had a mask mandate, limited, capacity indoors, and those vary, and I appreciate those because they've been put together in consultation with people, say from the Center for Infectious Disease Dynamics at Penn State, or really consulting very carefully with doctors and epidemiologists. I think it's that connection between common sense and caution, and then really good information that can help, localities do that. At the state level, I think that, the governor has certainly had an imperfect process, but erring on the side of caution is certainly the better course of action.
Thank you. Our final question for you. Do you support property tax reform, and what specific measures would you propose? And the second part of this question is, would you support property tax reform for all disabled veterans at the 100% level?
So the second part of that question, absolutely. Joe Waltz said it very eloquently earlier. I mean, men and women who go and give their lives for their country and pay so much with their bodies and their minds deserve that kind of relief. I mean, that's almost like the least that we can do. In terms of Property tax reform, of course we need property tax reform. We can't really do property tax reform though unless we do school funding reform. And if we're going to do that, then we have to open up the charter school law. You know, the charter school law in Pennsylvania, as the Auditor General said, is the worst charter school law in the country. And my opponent, Kerry Benninghoff, has been told this many times by many different school board members. And you know what he does? He sits on his hands and does nothing. Oh yeah, we should do something about that. But he won't do it. We need to reform that law so that we can reform property taxes.
You now have 90 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, thank you. And thank you again. Thank you to the candidates, commissioners, CNET, League of Women Voters, my family, my friends, all my supporters, and the voters of Central Pennsylvania. I'm running because I love my home. And I believe fundamentally that every person deserves a fair shot at a bright future. I come from a family of farmers and educators. My father was a teacher and his mother was a teacher. My mother was a teacher and her father was a teacher and a farmer. They were all hardworking people who gave their time to their families and to their students and to the land. When I look at the changes that are happening in the world, the changes that are happening in Pennsylvania, whether that is the technological change that demands that we invest in rural broadband, changes to our climate that Pennsylvania is unfortunately too much of a driver of, but can be a major solution for it. When I look at other technological changes that are fundamentally changing how we're going to get around and what will happen to people like the long haul trucker as we increasingly automate and make cars and trucks that self-drive. Who's going to respond to that? I can tell you it is not my opponent because he hasn't done it. But I am connected. I love my home and I want to work for the people of Central PA.
Thank you very much to our Democrat candidate for the 171st Pennsylvania House District, Mr. Peter Buck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In closing, I just wanted to say to everyone, Election Day is November 3rd, and the last day to register to vote is October 19th. The deadline to apply for the mail-in ballot is October 27th by 5 p.m. This year, you may choose to vote, of course, in person or mail-in ballot, and we just want you to encourage you all to vote. I would say the earlier, the better. Visit centercountyvotes.com or lwvcentercounty.org for more information. Thank you so much to all of the candidates for participating tonight, and of course to our audience who are viewing this on CNET Channel 7 or online at cnet1.org.